All this time you've been told communication is the key. Say what you feel, speak your truth, be expressive, be vulnerable. But where did it get you? That time you explained yourself over and over, trying to win her understanding. She drifted. The moment you poured your heart out, thinking honesty would earn you respect, it backfired. The more you talked, the more invisible you became. And now here you are, wondering why the loudest guy in the room always gets tuned out, while the one who says the least commands the most. You're about to unlock the silent edge, the rare power of restraint, tension, and presence. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to make people lean in when you speak, fear disappointing you, and feel your gravity even when you say nothing at all. You walk into a room, loud laughter, stories flying, guys flexing their knowledge like it's going to buy them a crown. You don't add to the noise, you scan, you sit, calm, watchful. Not shy, just uninterested in wasting words. And that's when they start noticing, because real power doesn't compete, it commands. A man who talks less is mistaken for mysterious at first, then intimidating, then dominant, and finally, irresistible. Why? Because silence creates space, and space creates tension, and tension is power. You ever see a lion roar constantly? No, he doesn't need to. His presence is enough. Same with men who've done the internal work. They don't need to fill air with half-truths or desperate validations. Every word they drop lands like a stone in water. Measured, weighted, intentional. They don't speak to get attention, they speak because it matters. And when you talk like that, people shut up and listen. Women get alert, men adjust, the whole room sinks to your rhythm. But it starts with this, shutting the hell up. You've been trained by society to overexpress, to think that silence is weakness, to believe that if you don't explain yourself, you're cold. But here's the truth. Men who talk too much lose their edge. Every joke, every story, every overshare, it chips away at your frame. Women get bored, bosses stop taking you seriously, friends start cutting you off mid-sentence. Because talking too much is like spending money every second. It doesn't matter how much you had, eventually you go broke. Silence is control, not just of others, but of yourself. When you can sit in tension, when you can let the silence breathe while someone else scrambles to fill it, you win. Because most people are addicted to approval. They talk just to avoid discomfort. But when you don't, it's unsettling and captivating. You look her in the eye, let her words hang and say nothing. Let her fidget, let her chase your reaction. That's power, that's dominance. And she feels it in her body before she even understands it in her mind. Men who dominate don't perform. They don't monologue, they don't rehearse. They observe, absorb, and strike. One sentence, one glance, one action. It's not the amount of words, it's the depth of energy behind them. You say, "Let's go," and she follows. You say no, and they don't ask again. Why? Because your silence taught them that when you do speak, it means something. This isn't about being rude or robotic. It's about breaking your addiction to over-communication. It's about rewiring the part of your brain that thinks silence means weakness. It doesn't mean weakness, it means control. When you can walk away from a conversation, from a woman, from a fight without justifying yourself, you win. Every time. Because the guy who talks less doesn't reveal his whole hand. He's always got something more. And that unknown makes people lean in, lean closer, lean harder. You ever notice how the guy who won't shut up always ends up being the joke? He's the one telling 10 stories at once, making sure everyone knows what he's done, where he's been, who he knows. But the guy who keeps to himself, the one who just watches, people talk about him. They wonder, they guess, they assume. And more often than not, they assume he's more than he is. More dangerous, more experienced, more dominant. That's the trick. Your silence becomes a blank canvas for their imagination, and their imagination will always paint you in stronger colors than your words ever could. It's not about saying nothing, It's about saying only what's necessary. And when you do, your tone, your pacing, your pauses, they hit harder than shouting ever could. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to explain to be understood. What you need is composure, presence, and the discipline to hold your frame when the world tries to pull you out of it. And make no mistake, they will try, especially women. They will test your silence with endless questions, passive-aggressive comments, emotional outbursts. They want to see if you'll fold, if you'll chase, if you'll explain yourself into weakness. And when you don't, when you just look at her, calm, unmoved, with no rush to clarify anything, she'll feel it. The shift, the threat, the thrill. Because you're not reacting. You're not desperate to be liked. You're not playing her game. You've got your own. You become unshakable when you stop needing to be understood. Most men crumble because they crave validation. They want to make sure she knows they're a nice guy, a real man, a good communicator. But dominance doesn't seek approval, it sets the terms. You don't need her to understand why you said no. You don't need to explain why you walked away. You don't even need to tell her what you want. You show her through action, through presence, through consistency. And the more you live that way, the more magnetic you become. She texts you 10 times, you respond once. She asks if you're upset, you say no, and leave it at that. Not because you're playing games, but because your peace is expensive, and you don't give it away to noise. She'll either level up to your calm or exit. But either way, you remain untouchable. Let's be clear, silence doesn't mean passive. It means precise. You don't hold your tongue out of fear, you do it out of strength. Because you're not looking for sympathy. You're looking for alignment. And if someone doesn't get it, that's on them. You're not in the business of over-explaining. You're in the business of results. And that means speaking when it serves you, not when you're asked to entertain, explain, or impress. You know what makes a man dangerous? When he knows something, but says nothing. When he sees the game, but doesn't comment. When he feels the insult, but doesn't react. That restraint, that cold internal control, is terrifying to people who run on emotion. Because they can't read you. And when they can't read you, they can't manipulate you. Start noticing your own habits. How often do you speak to fill silence? How often do you rush to respond, to prove something, to soften the tension? Catch it, cut it, let the tension sit. That tension is power. It makes her squirm. It makes other men question themselves. It makes you stronger. Because the man who can sit with discomfort is the man who eventually owns the room. She's not obsessed with the guy who tells her everything. She's obsessed with the man who makes her guess. The one who leaves a silence after her question just long enough to make her wonder if she crossed a line. The man who listens without blinking, who pauses before answering, if he answers at all. He doesn't rush to clarify or ease the tension, he lets it cook. That space, that slow burn, that's where desire lives. And most men kill it by over-talking. You think you're connecting with her by spilling your backstory, but you're just making yourself ordinary. Calm and predictable, a man with no mystery, no edge, no self-restraint. You want to dominate a woman's mind? Say less, do more. When she's begging for clarity, hold the silence a little longer. Let her chase understanding. Because the truth is, when a woman can't figure you out, you're all she thinks about. But it's not just women. It's the world, your boss, your enemies, your so-called friends. You talk too much, you give away your leverage. You explain your strategy, your dreams, your pain. They know exactly where to hit you. But if you move in silence, if you operate like a ghost, calm on the surface, unpredictable beneath, they can't touch you. And that's when respect kicks in. Because men don't respect noise, they respect presence. A man who talks less forces the world to lean in. And that's exactly what most people fear. Being forced to lean in, to work for your attention, to wait in uncertainty. Because most of society is addicted to instant reactions, overexposure, and verbal diarrhea disguised as connection. They crave fast validation, fast empathy, fast intimacy. But what happens when you don't give it to them? When you pause, look them in the eye, and say nothing? You flip the entire dynamic. You stop chasing connection and make them earn yours. Think about a negotiation. The most powerful moment isn't when one person speaks. It's the silence after. That dead space that makes the other guy twitch, second guess, offer more than he intended. That same energy applies to your life. When you get comfortable with silence, you gain leverage in arguments, in relationships, in business. You don't reveal what you want. You let them try to guess it. You let them overcommit. And that's how you win, by saying less and getting more. Because silence does work. It plants doubt. It creates allure. It builds pressure. And that pressure turns average men into leaders and passive boys into forces of nature. You want to dominate? Then talk like someone who doesn't need to convince anyone. Because that's what most men are doing when they talk too much, begging to be believed. But when you stop needing to be believed, you start being felt. And people trust what they feel more than what they hear. She doesn't remember everything you said, but she remembers how calm you were when she tried to provoke you. She remembers how you didn't flinch when other guys competed for her attention. She remembers how your silence echoed louder than any other man's performance. Here's the trap though, when you first start talking less, you'll feel the panic. The tension will rise in your chest, the urge to explain, to defend, to soften. Ignore it, sit with it, breathe through it. That's the detox. That's your voice adjusting to power. Let them get uncomfortable. Let her send 3 question marks. Let them ask, "Are you okay?" And just nod. Or better yet, say nothing. You're teaching the world how to treat you. Every time you break the silence, you lower your value. Every time you hold it, you raise your stock. You'll notice something else too. When you talk less, your words start to land with impact. People remember what you say. They quote you. They anticipate your opinion. You go from background noise to signal. It's like a sniper versus a guy with a machine gun. One is loud but sloppy. The other, quiet, calm, lethal. Be the sniper. Speak with the weight of a man who chooses every word. This applies in every area of your life. At work, you don't jump into every meeting like a golden retriever chasing approval. You listen, strategize, speak once, and make it matter. In relationships, you stop over-explaining yourself. You show up with calm authority. You make your boundaries felt, not debated. And in friendships, you stop being the clown, the talker, the filler. You become the man who is there, solid, grounded, unreadable. And that's the man people want to follow, to trust, to love, to fear. There's something primal that happens when you stop flooding the space with noise. You become a mirror. And mirrors are powerful. They reflect, they reveal, and they unsettle. Because when you stop talking, people are left to confront themselves, their insecurities, their assumptions, their expectations. Your silence throws it back at them. That's why they fidget. That's why they try to fill the gap. That's why they either lean forward or retreat. It's not you they're reacting to, it's the weight of their own projection, bouncing off your stillness. Most men don't realize how exhausting they sound. Trying to be funny, trying to sound smart, trying to prove they're the good guy. But every word you use to seek validation is a shovel digging your own grave. Because women don't crave words, they crave presence, they crave stability. They crave that masculine stillness that says, "I'm here, I see everything, I don't need to say a damn thing unless I choose to." And when she feels that, her energy shifts, the testing slows, the walls drop, and her feminine instinct locks onto yours like a magnet to steel. That's what happens when you speak from stillness, not performance. Your words come from a place that doesn't need a reaction. And ironically, that's exactly why you get one. The man who talks less holds the tension of the room like a conductor holding a single note. He's tuned in. Watching, reading everything, moving nothing, until the exact moment the silence becomes too much for everyone else to bear. And then he speaks. And when he does, they listen like it's gospel. Think of every woman who's lost respect for a man. It never started with how little he spoke. It always started with how much he gave away. Too many emotions, too many apologies, too many please understand me monologues. He thought words would fix it, but words don't fix disrespect, they deepen it. She doesn't want you to talk her into desire. She wants to feel your discipline, your control, your clarity. She wants to feel like you could explain yourself, but you don't need to, because your actions, your body language, your presence, that says it all. A woman will always test a man's frame, not because she's cruel, but because she's wired to. It's how she determines your strength. And if every test leads to a long conversation, a detailed emotional explanation, a desperate need to be understood, you've already lost. But if she pushes and you stay still, unfazed, maybe you raise one eyebrow, maybe you smirk, and then go silent, that's when she feels it. That subtle electric chill that says, this man doesn't need my validation. He's the mountain. I either rise up or slide off. And that same presence translates to every room you enter, whether it's a boardroom, a locker room, or a living room full of people who think they've got you figured out. Say less, watch more. You'll see everything, the fake smiles, the subtle power plays, the attention seekers trying too hard. And while they're busy performing, you're collecting data, holding your power, dominating the space, quietly. That's the edge, that's the upgrade. That's the difference between noise and signal, between being heard and being felt. You don't raise your voice, you raise your frequency. You move through the world like a man who knows his worth and doesn't need to speak it to prove it. You want to be unforgettable? Then make people feel something in your absence. That's what talking less does. It leaves an imprint. They remember how calm you were, how your silence made them question themselves, how they replayed your last few words in their head, wondering what you really meant. Because you didn't overshare, you didn't explain, you didn't rush to fill the gap, you left space, and in that space you created gravity. A man who talks less doesn't live on the surface. He lives in the deep. His thoughts are layered, his emotions are disciplined. He's not the guy narrating every move, every thought, every insecurity. He's not broadcasting his life like a damn podcast. He's surgical, subtle, strategic. His silence isn't emptiness, it's volume turned up inward. He sees everything, he feels everything, but he doesn't need to say everything. And when he finally does speak, every syllable has weight. You hear it in his tone, you feel it in your gut, because there's no fluff, no filler, no neediness, just cold, clear direction. We're leaving. I don't do that. That's enough. And suddenly the whole room recalibrates. Because leadership doesn't beg, it doesn't over-explain, it asserts, without apology, without noise. And when you lead like that from silence, not speech, people follow, willingly, eagerly, instinctively. Stop being the guy who needs to be heard to feel alive. Be the guy whose silence says more than another man's 10-minute monologue. Be the man who can sit at a table, say nothing for an hour, and still leave the strongest impression in the room. Because power doesn't yell, it whispers, and still gets everything it wants. You don't need her to get it. You don't need anyone to get it. You just need to be it. Calm, stoic, unbothered. The less you say, the more dominant you become. And the moment you stop needing to prove that, you'll already have it.